Hello, everybody. Welcome back along. And it is predictions time. There'll be a little bit of championship and some FA Cup to make things up this week. And my guest is Mr. Chris Goreham. Chris, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, Ben. I'm Chris Goreham from BBC Radio Norfolk. I commentate on all of Norwich City's matches. I present the station's breakfast show as well. But I'm delighted to be doing this week. This is the only way we can get Norwich City involved in FA Cup fourth round weekend.
There you go. And there's two angles to this. The first one is, how many championship teams have you seen live in the flesh this season?
Pretty much all of them.
And we've also got a Norwich City versus Ipswich Town angle here, which is always a little bit fun. But what you're saying, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, is there is no way in the world you should lose to me in a predictions competition, right?
This is why I'm a little bit resentful and a bit doubtful about doing this, is because those of us who go on the radio and talk about football, we like to give the impression that we know what we're talking about. It's things like prediction competitions that can absolutely catch you out and make you look like a piece of cheese very quickly. So there'll be no bold predictions from me. I'll try and let my predictions do the talking.
Well, I very, very much appreciate you coming on then, Chris, with that being said. You're great sport. So the scoring system is as follows. You get a point if you get the correct outcome, regardless of the score. You get a point for getting the home score right. So even if you've got the outcome wrong, if you get the home goals right, you get a point for getting the away goals right as well. So that's a little bit of a bonus. If you get all three right, so home, away, which means by definition you get the outcome, you also get a bonus point. So if you actually get the right score, you get 4 points. Now, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that Sani Rudravajula only scored 12 points last week. That gives you an in. The bad news is that Sam Parkin is an annoying know-it-all who got 19 points, and I don't think anyone is ever going to get near him. So do you think you can beat Sani or get near Sam?
When you said 12, I was actually quite impressed with that. So I thought, 12, that sounds good. But clearly,
well, remember, if you can just get yourself one bang on, Chris, that's 4 points straight away. True. So that pads it very, very nicely.
Yeah. Okay, so as long as I get 3 bang on, then we're okay.
Oh, God, if you get 3 bang on, you are absolutely laughing. I tell you, people think this is easy, but there we go. Right, let's get into this. So what we're going to do, we've got 3 championship games. There's actually 10 FA Cup games. So what I'll do, just to see if someone can get near to Sam Parkin, is I'll let you have 13 games. He only had 12, and we'll take an average and notch you down. So you've got a little bit of an advantage over Parkin, if that works.
Points per game. Yep, I like it.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. You've been doing this through COVID, haven't you? There we go. Right, let's start with the one thing I've also been told by my audience I have to do is offer you the choice. Do you want me to predict first and then you can respond to my thoughts, or do you want to go first?
God, like a penalty shootout. I'm very happy for you to go first.
It's different than a penalty. Always go first in a penalty shootout. Always go second on predictions.
I'll let you go first.
So I will start then. I'll start us off with Coventry versus Huddersfield. Now, you've got a distinct advantage over me on this one because you saw Coventry last week. Despite what you saw, and Norwich kind of battered them, didn't they? I do fancy them against Huddersfield, who I do often back against Huddersfield, I have to say. I find them a little bit scatty. So I will go with Coventry. I think Huddersfield will score. There was goals. Let me go 3-1 Coventry. What are you saying?
That is what I was going to say instinctively.
You can double up.
Allowed to agree. Are we allowed to agree?
Absolutely.
I'll show you my working. You're right that Norwich did batter Coventry on Saturday, but only for the first 20 minutes. Norwich were 3-0 up in no time, and then it felt like it might be a very, very comfortable afternoon, but it really wasn't. And I actually left that ground on Saturday being quite impressed by Coventry for a number of reasons. One was the fact that they, from 3-0 down with 20 minutes on the clock and a bit of an injury crisis, there are a lot of teams in that situation who would have folded, and I've seen fold, but they didn't. By half an hour, it was 3-2 again, and they were back in the game. And by half time, actually, David Wagner was the more concerned, I think, of the two head coaches. He's the one that made a change at half time. So really impressed with the spirit. I really like the job that Mark Robins is doing there. I would also just want to say how impressed I was with the way Coventry handled the minute's applause we had during the game for Norwich City's fan of last season, Amber Sheehy, who died recently at the age of 8. And it's one of those where, obviously, if it's your club, and from a Norwich City point of view, it was big for us, and we knew the away fans were going to join in with it, and that would have been special. But Coventry at their ground actually really embraced it as well, and they had a nice picture of her on the big screen, and the home fans joined in as well. They made sure they got the message out beforehand, and I think when you see something like that happen, you can't help but leave with a lot of extra respect for a club, and it was really classy. So yeah, well done Coventry. So for that, I think you'll beat Huddersfield, and I will just to make it interesting, I will go 2-1. I'll take a goal
There
off
you
Coventry. I'll take a goal off Coventry just because they do have a lot of injuries at the moment, and that I think is slightly holding back what is a squad with a lot of potential.
Not because you're getting competitive.
Well, got to make it interesting, haven't we?
There you go.
If we just agree all the time, it's not going to be much of a
That'd be
competition,
rubbish,
is
wouldn't
it?
Hull versus QPR. QPR are a little bit not great at the moment. I don't think Neil Critchley's kind of got his feet under the table properly yet. I couldn't say the same for Liam Rossini. I think Hull are actually quite good. So I fancy Hull. I don't think there's much in it in terms of personnel. So I'm either a draw or I'm Hull. And QPR are a bit light on goals. Let's go 1-0 Hull. What do you think?
When the game came up, first instinctively I went 1-1, and the reason is that of the two teams, I've seen them both once this season, and Hull, although they beat Norwich in the very early part of the season, actually they were hanging on very much towards the end of the game, and that was one of those ones where you wondered how Norwich had lost it. QPR, much more impressive. They got a 0-0 draw at Carrow Road, but what I'm saying now, actually disregard it all because both clubs have changed their managers since, as most championship clubs have along the way. So I think given that the two sides have had a bit of an up and down season, I will go for a 1-1 draw in that one.
Got it. Last championship game then, quite a difficult one to call. Two sort of top six playoff challenges, Borough versus Watford. Now, I think I'm behind Borough on this one. I don't quite yet trust Watford under Bilic. I think he'll get them moving, but this window will help him. I'm going to explain away Borough's defeat at Sunderland because of the red card to Dale Fry. So I will go Watford to score, Borough to win 2-1 Middlesbrough.
This is a really tough one, isn't it? Because Middlesbrough under Michael Carrick, they've been going really well just until the last couple of weeks. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see which way it goes for Middlesbrough from here, because it's been all fine wines and Belgian chocolates under Michael Carrick. He's taken to management in the Championship very, very well, hasn't he? But this is the first time he's had a bit of a test. And maybe I'm scarred by Norwich City usually losing to Watford, but they seem to be one of those teams that, even though you may not think about Watford very much, they're always there. They always get the job done. They always find a way. This has got a 1-0 Watford written all over it to me.
Wow, I love that. Great shout. That's a really good. I like it when we go for opposite outcomes. That's always good fun. Right, let's get into the FA Cup now, and I'll throw the excuses up early. This is a nightmare because Chris and I have no idea whether the managers will play the teams that actually give us the information in terms of the league form. So it's a little bit stick your finger in the air. We've got a few hot favourites in some of them to try and help us out. Not the first two, though, because they're all championship games. Blackburn versus Birmingham. I think Birmingham need the win more, but they're struggling at the moment. I don't think Birmingham will win, but they could take it to a very unhelpful replay. So I will back Blackburn, who had their first draw in 100 years, didn't they? Let's go 2-0 Blackburn.
Yeah, I'm along the same sort of lines because I think if you back Blackburn drawing a game, then you really haven't been watching this season, because that was a first, wasn't it, last weekend? This would have been the tie that Norwich would have been in, because it was Blackburn who knocked Norwich out in the last round. So
you'd have fancied Birmingham at home, wouldn't you?
Well, and funnily enough, had Birmingham been knocked out of the League Cup, the FA Cup, Norwich would have been playing Birmingham in the league this weekend. So it would have been, it could have been Norwich v Birmingham in the FA Cup or the league this weekend. Blackburn, I've seen beat Norwich twice recently. Their win at Carrow Road in the league just about did for Dean Smith. I've been impressed that the two times I've seen them, I know that you only have to look at their results and the columns of wins and losses. Yeah, they've blown hot and cold. But I think Birmingham, it's getting to the point for them. I know what you said about them needing a win, but they're on such a poor run. It's starting to get a little bit uncomfortable looking over their shoulder, I think it's almost getting to the point where they probably are not thinking about the FA Cup, and the league has become so important for them now. So I think this will be pretty routine for Blackburn. I'm going to say 3-0, and I was really impressed with some of the fringe players that they did play on third round day. John Dale Thomason's got a really good squad there. Ash Phillips, the defender, he's only 17. He came on as a substitute early on in the game, and what struck me is that he's so young, he couldn't have the Blackburn sponsor's name on his shirt because I think it's a gambling company. So that really stood out. And he had a great game. Lewis Vale, or Jack Vale, I should say, scored the goal. He looks a player. So I think
signed
Blackburn will have
Silver
plenty.
Thomas as well yesterday, who was excellent for Huddersfield with your boy Sinani doing all the set plays as well, wasn't he? Right.
I think they'll have plenty.
Let's move on. Bristol City versus West Brom. I'm going into the head of Carlos Corberan, who I think will make at least 7 changes for this one. I don't think he gives 2 hoots about the FA Cup from what I saw in the last round. So I'm going to back Bristol. I'm backing against West Brom. I'm going to back Bristol City. Maybe a farewell goal for Semenyo. I will go 1-0 Bristol City.
This is such a difficult one because if this was a championship game, you would go, well, I would go West Brom all the way. But you're quite right. They struggled past Chesterfield, didn't they, in the previous round, which does suggest a club that realises it's got other priorities. Bristol City, they've had, they're one of those teams that I see from time to time, usually when they play Norwich, and at times they really impress. Other times they never quite seem to get going. And we've been, several seasons now, we've been really waiting for it to get going there, haven't we? But I'm going to go with West Brom, again, just to make it competitive. Let's go 2-1 to West Brom in this one.
Beautiful. Right, Fulham versus Sunderland, which I think will be a really good game. And I don't think they've put it on for TV coverage, but they should have, in my opinion, because Sunderland will take, with FA Cup, you get more allowance, and Sunderland will take a ton of fans down there. With that being said, I don't think they'll win, but I think it'll be an interesting one. So I'm going to go for a silly one, because if you're Fulham, I suppose, you're doing really well in the league, and if the big guns can kind of knock each other out and you can get towards the end, you've got a chance of getting quite far in this. So let's go for a fun one. Let's go for 3-2 to Fulham.
3-2 Fulham. Instinctively, I'm thinking 3-1 because I've been really impressed what I've seen with Fulham this season. And we know, let's not forget, it's not that long since we saw Fulham playing against Championship opposition, and we saw what they did more often than not. So I think backing against Fulham against Championship opposition would be pretty foolish given on the last couple of seasons. So as much as I admire what's happening at Sunderland, they are another team who've probably got bigger things on their mind, haven't they, than the FA Cup in terms of the season. So I'll go 3-1 Fulham for that one.
Speaking of teams who've got bigger things on their mind, and a team very close to my heart, Ipswich versus Burnley. Now, I would like nothing more than for Ipswich to cause a cup upset against Burnley. But I'm going to play my concentrate on the league card here and kind of push it. Look, Burnley are really good, and I don't think they would lose a lot by playing their first team or close to their first team. I think they've got good options. So, as much as I would love Ipswich to take them close, it's not going to happen, in my humble opinion. And I think Burnley will probably cruise in by 2 or 3. Let's not back too heavily against my lot. 2-0 Burnley.
See, I'm going to be more charitable. I'm actually going to give Ipswich more of a chance.
We don't want to replay, Chris. No replays, please.
Don't worry. I'm not going replay. I'm definitely going to have a close eye on this one because Norwich's next league game is Burnley at home next Saturday. So the poor Burnley fans have got to trek to East Anglia on 2 Saturdays running. I think actually, I was looking down the fixtures and of the games on Saturday. I think this is potentially going to be one of the games of the day, one of the matches of the round, because Ipswich are. I know they've stumbled a little bit recently, but you can see what Kieran McKenna's doing there. There's excitement around the club. There's positivity around the club. A home tie against the team from a higher division, they tend to be quite an occasion, don't they? Whatever league you're in. So I think Ipswich will give a good account of themselves. But the fact that Burnley knocked out Bournemouth so impressively in the third round suggests they are a club who are taking the cup seriously enough. So plenty of goals. I'm going 3-2 to Burnley.
Oh, I love that. The Ipswich fans will probably enjoy the game if they just give a good account of themselves against a team that's frankly just cruising in the Championship. Then I think that'll keep
you want the perfect scenario there is it's 2-2 in the 95th minute, and then Burnley score, and then you don't get a replay. So even though you lose, you let an injury time goal, people are slightly relieved.
I don't know, a win and an away tie against Arsenal or Tottenham or Man United would do. But yeah, there you go. Luton versus Grimsby. I don't know how heavy Rob Edwards will go in terms of first teamers on this one. I know they're playing on Tuesday night as well against Cardiff, and they're in the playoff shake-up. So I think it'll be like a 1B team, but I still think they'll have enough to beat Paulhurst and Grimsby. Let's go 2-0 to Luton.
That's exactly what I was going to say. 2-0. I am going to agree with you on this one because I like Luton. I like what's going on there. I like that Rob Edwards coming in actually doesn't seem to have disrupted too much from what was going on there previously. They haven't got that big a squad, but I think that sometimes means that the players you've got to bring in probably doesn't disrupt things too much. So yeah, I'm definitely not betting against Luton for that one. I am going to agree with you on that one, and I'm going to go 2-0.
I hadn't spotted this one. Southampton versus Blackpool, which will, of course, after the postponement last week, be Mick McCarthy's first game up against Nathan Jones. And I think Nathan Jones will take this quite seriously. I think there's very few opportunities to, get some confidence, get some goals, get some wins. Blackpool are struggling a little bit. I'm sure Mick will try and make this, well, let's say, have a slightly cautious approach for this one. So I don't think there'll be much in it, but let's go 1-0 to Southampton.
That does seem like a fairly good guess, doesn't it? The only thing that I would suggest might weigh it slightly a little bit more in Blackpool's favour is the old new manager bounce. That they've got Mick McCarthy, and I imagine when he walks into your dressing room, you do want to impress him straight away. And the fact that Southampton, well, they've done great things in the League Cup this season, but we know for them, it's the Premier League all the way, isn't it? But maybe that bit of League Cup experience they've had. I know they lost the first leg of the semi-final, but that suggests they might be more of a cup team than a league team, shall we say? So I'll go 2-1 Southampton.
Oh, nice. Right, Preston versus Spurs, which is a very historical FA Cup fixture. Now, Preston won in the league last week, didn't they? But they're better away than they are at home. I haven't gone for a big cricket score yet in these predictions, so there'll be one. Although actually we've got Man United Reading coming up, haven't we? Maybe I'll reserve judgment in that respect. I fancy Spurs to win comfortably actually in this one, and I think we'll probably see the stars at least start in terms of Kane and Son and Kulusevski. So I'm going to go for 3-0 to Spurs.
Again, you've said exactly what I was going to say. So I'll go different. But Preston, you're quite right. Their home record, I think. Norwich played them a couple of weeks ago, and at that point they'd only scored eight goals. Yeah, they'd only scored 8 league goals at home all season, which has been their big problem, hasn't it? Because they've gone through runs where defensively they've been superb, but much better away from home. But maybe playing Tottenham in the Cup, it will feel a bit more like an away fixture in that suddenly they're not the favourites, are they? You've got a Premier League team who will come onto them a bit. So maybe that might play into Preston's favour. Just don't think they've got enough goals in them. So I will go, what will I go? Let's go 2-0 to Tottenham.
Manchester United versus Reading then, which of course, Paul Ince was a great player for Manchester United returning with Reading. Reading have been a bit up and down in the Championship, a bit hard to forecast, a bit hard to predict. But I think Manchester United have got quite good momentum at the moment. And I think there'll be plenty of squad players who'll be able to slip in and easily beat Reading. Maybe it won't be an absolute gubbin, but let's go for a comfy 3-1. I'm sure Reading will take plenty of fans, so let's hope they get a goal to celebrate. Let's hope they take the lead, in fact. So I'll go 3-1 Manchester United.
Yeah, I'm not giving Reading much hope in this one. I think the one thing they have got going for them is they've got quite an experienced squad, haven't they, at Reading? So I don't think they'll necessarily be overawed by the occasion. But they've had a habit this season for when they've gone behind in a game for that to be it pretty quickly. And they have had a few goals scored against them. Even Stoke had been struggling, racked up a few goals against them recently, didn't they? So I will go for a comfortable home win. I think it'll be 4-0 to Manchester United, but I think 3 of those goals might come quite late in the piece.
Now, I've got a massive disadvantage on this one because the Stoke manager, Chris Goreham, will have spoken to hundreds and hundreds of times and will probably know exactly what he's going to do, and he's probably not going to tell me. We haven't had any upsets yet, and we've got the 2 contenders with Stoke, Stevenage. We've got Wrexham, Sheffield United coming up as well. Steve Evans will properly go for this. He'll want to win this, absolutely. You're going to be able to tell me in a minute whether Alex Neil's going to care about this or not. I know they had a good win. I want there to be upsets in the Cup because it's fun. But but I'm not sure there's going to be. I think let's go for a draw and like a Stevenage late equaliser or something. Let's go for Stoke 2, Stevenage 2, and you can tell me what Alex Neil will do with this game.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what his FA Cup record was like when he was at Norwich City, because he only got the job because Norwich got knocked out. Well, not only, but the last game for his predecessor, Neil Adams, was Norwich getting knocked out of the FA Cup by Preston. So he didn't do an FA Cup game for quite a while. And I think I'm right in saying that the first year Alex Neil took Norwich into the FA Cup, they got drawn against Manchester City in the third round. So that was over before it got started. So, yeah, I just think, putting the Norwich stuff to one side, I think Stoke at the minute, he just needs to keep winning, doesn't he? Because he's not had many this season. There've been a little bit of positivity with that win the other day. So I don't think he can afford to take this one lightly, really, because he's not convinced everybody at Stoke yet. So if you then get knocked out by Stevenage of the FA Cup, you almost give those who are doubting you a bit of another stick to beat you with, don't you? So I think, as much as I admire Stevenage, and we saw quite a bit of them in the first round, because they knocked out one of our local teams, Kings Lynn, in the first round. So I will go for victory for Stoke, but it's not going to be straightforward. I'll say 2-1.
Like it. Right, can we get an upset on this one then? Wrexham v Sheffield United. This absolutely reeks of an upset with Rob McElhaney and Ryan Reynolds involved at Wrexham, and it's going to be on TV. I know Sheffield United are way, way better than them, and I'm going against my better judgment here because Sheffield United will probably win. But let's go for an upset anyway, just because it's fun. And what did Wrexham? It was 2-1 against Arsenal all those years ago. Let's go for a 2-1.
Yes, I remember it well.
Yeah, let's go for a 2-1. You'd have liked to have been commentating on that one, wouldn't you? Let's go for a 2-1 to be to Wrexham.
Oh, I think, I can see exactly where you're coming from, but I think my issue with the FA Cup now is people start to expect shocks, and if you're expecting a shock, it stops being a shock. Yeah, it's not a shock then, is it? If you're expecting it, I want to be genuinely surprised. So I am going to be boring and say Wrexham, they'll give a good account of themselves. They may even take the lead and go 1-0 up, and I'm sure the place will go crazy. But Sheffield United, they're a decent team. I've already seen them. I saw Norwich go 2-0 up at Bramall Lane earlier this season at half-time, and they stormed back. So I'm not going to bet against Sheffield United. I think they'll have just too much in the end and win. I'm going to go for another 2-1 here in the favour of the Blades.
Brilliant stuff, Chris. Right, so we put him through his paces there with about 800 different leagues and 13 games. Again, we'll average it out and get a total for 12, so that's fair on the leaderboard. A reminder, Sam Parkin's up there on 19. Sani Rivadula is on 12. And we'll add, it's going to be like the Top Gear one. We'll add people in. Usual trigger warnings here on the prediction show. Please, it's just a little bit of fun. And if you're going to struggle to cope with someone suggesting your team might lose a football match, I'd suggest maybe taking the dog for a walk or something. And we're reporting in good faith here. Chris, where can my subscribers find you on Twitter and on the radio?
So on Twitter at C Goreham, Goreham. I do a podcast weekly about Norwich City with my colleague Rob Butler. We talk about all things Norwich City on The Scrimmage, which you can find on BBC Sounds. And you can listen to our coverage of Norwich City matches live. And if you're in Norfolk, I do the breakfast show 6 till 10, Monday to Friday as well on Radio Norfolk.
Absolute legend, Chris. And if you are interested in hearing more from Chris, we're going to hit stop on this right now. And we're going to talk a little bit football commentary, a little bit Norwich. So feel free to head over to Patreon. Find us over there. In the meantime, hit the thumbs up button and get your predictions in the comments. I don't want to hear from you afterwards, being all wise after the event. Get predicting now. Remember, it's timestamped, so I'll know when you've put them in. But get involved. All good fun here on the Prediction Show.